Thank you, Judith, for your kind words. And yeah, and thanks. I'm very honored to be able to speak at this event. So thank you for inviting me and thinking of me. And yeah, so I'm a circus performer and I guess a circus researcher. And it's always a little bit difficult to start a conversation because often how to say the genre of circus is like a subfield in the performing in performance studies and theater studies. So there's actually not a lot of general knowledge about circus studies, if we can speak in the general audience, also in general academic audience, because it's such a particular field of interest. However, for me, it's the opposite, of course. I see everything through the lens of circus. My whole world is based on circus, right? When I watch a movie, I see its circus capacities, right, stuff like that. So I thought before talking about Circus Amok, I wanted to tell you about the discourse right now in circus studies, just to frame a little bit, to provide a location right now. And there's like the understanding of there's like the traditional circus, and traditional circus is let's say, and it's okay, my summary is very cartoonish, right? It's just to give you an idea. It's not a very academic and precise summary, but rather to give you all a roadmap, right? So we have traditional circus, and traditional circus is like understood as a circus which is very much act-based structured, right? So you have several acts that perform, and then there's another act that has nothing to do often in terms of narrative with the previous act, right? So it has a serial structure to it. And the idea is also that there are animal performing in the circus, right? So there are animal performance like elephants, tigers, horses, and so on that are part of the traditional circus experience, right? And this still exists in some ways in Europe and the US. I've been like 2 weeks ago to the Shriner Circus, Jericho Shriner Circus here at the Freedom Hall, and I think that could be understood as a traditional circus in a 3-ring structure, right? And then we have, starting the 1970s, we have the emergence of what is called the new circus, or the Cirque Nouveau, which originated both in the US and with the Pickle family, and actually with Bread and Puppet, and then bleed over mainly in France. And that was a particular political understanding at that time, right? Because with the upheaval of the 60s, 70s, they were thinking about, okay, how can we make an art form more populist? How can we think of the community, engage in the art? How can we break the fourth wall, right? So there's all the notion coming with, the question of festivals. The circus ring is understood as a democratic structure, right? People surround the ring. It's often performed outdoors, so that everybody can attend to the performances if they're there, right? Often there was no money charge for the event, but rather donation based at the end of the performance, right? So we have that starting in the 60s, from the 60s, 70s, starting end of the 70s, and very big in the 80s, particularly big in France. And that then this whole thing became institutionalized on one thing. And now we are in a phase where we might, where notions are a little bit like very porous. But let's say now we are in the now we have something that it's called contemporary circus, right? Where contemporary circus can be quite everything, actually, right? Mainly it's understood as a circus without animal performers, especially without wild animal performers. It's very big in France and in Europe, and And also in US particular, if you consider, some would not consider, but if you consider a Cirque du Soleil as part of the contemporary circus experience, right? Some would say Cirque du Soleil would still be part of traditional circus, but okay, this is a debate that I don't want to go into, but let's say, but what is very important is that contemporary circus has become much more institutionalized. So the let's say, where in the 80s there was a particular political message involved, right, in the 70s, 80s, in terms of new circus, right? We're doing outside, we're doing a populist theater form, we are anti-mainstream, we are anti-bourgeois theater, right? With particular political questions also that are explored in the performances. We have in contemporary circus a more, let's say, mainstream, not very much, not a very big focus on explicit political questions, generally. Okay, now there's of course a whole debate what is a political and how we define it, political or political, and in the public or in performance sphere, right? But this is just a general, the general division. Does it make sense so far? Okay, and now from scholarship, in terms of especially US-based scholarship, it's very much based on the traditional circus, right? And especially critical scholarship, they understand, let's say, the traditional circus, and let's say, you know, as a tool of the ideological state apparatus, right? So it is a tool that actually, how to say, promotes normativity, promotes European superiority, promotes, did I say normativity? Yeah, performs white superiority, right? Or promoted, promoted, and a certain kind of a nation state, like you know, it is in promotion of the dominant ideology of the time, right? Rather than subversive, it is a tool for it. And now and then the circus is divided strictly into into performance spheres. So we have the things that happen on center stage, which is let's say aerial acts, animal acts, tight wire acts, acrobatics, right? The thing that happens on center stage, that is that provides a model for the ideal citizen, right? That is like the extraordinary body is there exposed as kind of an ideal where one should strive to. Okay, and then we have the side shows, especially in context of US, which is let's say that's where the freak performers perform, right? The bearded lady, the wolf man, and all those kind of, the fat lady and stuff like that. And there, this is the place of abjection, and it is the place of the anti-ideal, right? So while on center stage, what is shown is the ideal, how to say, the ideal citizen. We have here the counter image of the anti-ideal I, right? It is everything what you should not be. So so in terms of freaks, right, it's particularly ambiguity, right? In terms of, okay, it is not clear if it's a man or a woman, or it's not clear if it's a human or an animal. It is not clear, right, if it's a grown-up or little person, right, or child, right, in terms of the little people. So you have this kind of the freak show is this place of ambiguity, and is thereby, because of the ambiguity, understood as something which is dangerous for a system that relies on categories, you know, it is understood as a place of danger, but it is a kind of aestheticized, and it is performed in this kind of particular sphere where you can make fun of it. It has been stratified or modeled into a particular place, right? Okay, so this is the general. Let's say this is the general division that we have. Okay, so this is my first note. I'm going away. All right. Of course, then there's like a lot of how to say scholarship around those around the stability of those categories that have been set up, right? So, for example, Peter Tait, which is a very important circus studies scholar, she says, actually, you know, also the center stage has already been a place of ambiguity as well, right? So, particularly in terms of femininity and question of femininity, masculinity, you know. So there's the question of, you know, the aerial performers who have a very strong body and very strong physique, which actually challenges the notion of how to say obedient femininity at that time, right? So it is not such a clear-cut situation as some would like to think about just in service of ideology. There's already kind of subversive action happening in front of the audience as well, also in the mainstream performances, right? So the question of that there are strong women, you know, often those women were particularly the heads of the household, some of them, right, were getting very well paid, and often there's also the notion of cross-dressing, right? Some male performers dressed as females, some female performers dressed as male performers. So the question is, of course, is that was it more economic situation, right? It's the need because certain acts were popular at that time, so you try to fit into what is right now in, or or, you know, it does not have to be exclusive. Is it also a question of already exposing a quite of queer identity where that circus allowed an opening, right? So we have those kind of questions there, and then we have somebody, Kate Holmes' article, who talks about glamour, particularly about glamour, and she describes, and I read out a little bit. She said, so glamour. So. Kate Holmes, centering female aerialists in her research, contends that the notion of glamour provides a more suitable framework. Instead, why grotesque? Sorry, I discussed there the notion of grotesque. I was talking about queer and grotesque. We'll not go into that. Glamour an exchange from within. Glamour has the power to reframe what borders on transgressive are acceptable. Daring female aerial performance made female prowess not only more acceptable, but aspirational. Furthermore, glamour describes desire for an extraordinary existence, a life not hampered by socio-cultural restrictions. Glamour has therefore a non-normative impetus as well. Yet, instead of provoking forms of devaluation of status and it heightens the status into an aspirational entity. So that's very interesting for me to understand that maybe the notion of glamour has, in the circus context, right, thinking of this are working class people, or, you know, coming from a particular social strata, that glamour is also provides a kind of emancipatory way, or Foucault might say a technique of the self, right? To establish oneself beyond what the social the social reality is given to an individual. Okay, so again, just saying that that the notion of both Peter Holmes and Tait they are already challenging the idea that a circus is all about the ideological state apparatus. Okay. All right. So this is right now a little bit the framework where we go, you know, so about what has been talked or discussed a little bit in understanding of circus. Now, the freak is an interesting character, right, or persona, because how the freak is recuperated right now is, you know, the freak as the non-normative, non-normative identity or entity rather than identity, entity, or the ambiguity and kind of the deviancy of the freak body has been channeled into the notion of the queer, right, in contemporary studies, right, and particularly, and now that makes a Circus Amok very interesting. Jennifer Miller, who is one of the main who is the founder of Circus Amok and its main, how to say, she's the director and you know, she runs mostly the group, right, over the last 20 years. They have become a focal point that lineates the freak to the queer. Particular because, as you will see in the short videos that I will show, Jennifer Miller self-identifies as a woman with a beard, right? So she has facial hair, and she's very proud of it and really shows it. And she and of course that has for a lot of scholars a connection to the bearded lady of in the free context, right, of the sideshows, right? Okay. So before showing a video, I'm just like want to read out a small thing that I wrote and then somehow focuses on the connection between and actually also summarize some of my questions between Circus Amok and the notion of queer and contemporary circus studies and the freak. Okay, so in the article in Freak and Queer, a collaborative essay published in Performance Matters, special issue on circus studies, Charles Bateson wonders why the issue of queerness has been overlooked in the emerging field of circus studies. The fact that so little scholarship touches on the relation between queerness and circus strikes him as peculiarly, mainly because the queer, always already the exceptional, the odd, the outsider, the outcast, lies at the heart of circus practices and meaning. For him, the circus, populated by extraordinary bodies and exceptional talents, constitutes a place of difference and otherness. Circus evokes non-normativity and is therefore intrinsically queer. Despite the wholehearted embrace of the circus as a queer spectacle, Bateson notices that the freak figure has entered mainstream proper in recent years, mainly through TV shows and cinema. Bateson, prompted by the normalization of the freak, asks if the freak is still freakish, the queer still queer. Bateson, Haley Molan, Kelly Richmond, and Tyler Seidlich respond to Bateson's question. So the question that I just asked, is the freak still freakish, the queer still queer? By analyzing several contemporary circus performances from a queer studies perspective. They display how the circus performance articulate non-normative expressions of gender, sexuality, and desirability. Particular attention is given to Jennifer Miller, a self-described woman with a beard and founder of Circus Amok. Miller's unusual facial hair growth invites comparison with the figure of the bearded lady, a common sight in the context of traditional freak shows. Furthermore, the freak and queer are put in relation to Barthin's grotesque and the carnivalesque, therefore, collapsing all three notions into one. This is the world where the grotesque body, exemplified by Miller and her entourage of genderqueer freaks, reigns. The danger of such an account is to attend to Jennifer Miller's queerness solely in terms of her freak position. The semiotic chain of grotesque freak queer produces a fixed political referent, a stable subject of the circus queer freak, right? That is my problem. So I'm taking the work of Circus Amok, focus on the performance at a crossroads, and I try to disentangle the notion of grotesque, freak, and queer from each other. While these terms produce interesting tension when brought into relation, they address distinct aspects in the performance. In At a Crossroads, the notion of grotesque speaks to the social relations under neoliberalism rather than to Jennifer Miller's performance persona. By approaching Miller's body difference merely in terms of grotesque, Bateson and the other authors risks of enfreaking Miller into a place of abjection. Further, when talking about her queer performance persona, Miller emphasizes notions such as glamour and fabulousness. Such affirmative and positive self-designation of queerness complicates the utilization of freak and grotesque to describe Miller's work and resonates more with camp aesthetics. Drawing on Brechtian epic theater, I suggest that Circus Amok makes glamour strange. Circus Amok uses a glamour, Circus Amok's use of glamour does not ascribe to, but unsettle capitalist consumerism by embracing a do-it-yourself aesthetics, and so on. So what I'm trying to do now is actually to rethink a little bit how Jennifer Miller is being brought into context of contemporary circus studies. Again, because there's like this understanding of she is a freak, right? Or they are, she identifies as she, they. She, a circus identifies as a freak because she has a bearded lady. She's her sexuality and her gender is fluid, and that's what makes her freak and queer, and that is what makes Circus Amok queer, right? The identifying bodies, right? But what I think what is interesting is this is, of course, a very important aspect, right? I'm not challenging all of that. I think there's, of course, some truth to it. But what I think is very interesting is actually the notion that the question is, first of all, what is Circus Amok's relation to the queer and the freak, right? And also, is it really what's happening there mainly, or what else is happening there which actually describes a different queerness, right? And so there are two things, mainly things that I want to think about: her understanding of fabulousness and glamour, right? And I wonder if there's something about taking the space of I'm a queer person. I identify I'm queer. I'm a woman with beard, but look how fabulous I am, and how amazing I am, and how beautiful I am, right? Something else, rather than just you know, so there's something that is taking up what I think was interesting in the article of Holmes when she describes glamour as a quality of emancipation, taken up by Jennifer Miller using fabulousness, right? So there's something that is an interest for me, and then there's something interest between queer as a methodology rather than as an identity. So I think that the Circus Amok is not only queer because Jennifer Miller is a queer subject, but actually what Circus Amok does, it's queering, right? It queers maybe a particular understanding of mainstream circus. Who can do circus? What bodies can do circus, right? It politicizes a circus, which, especially if we're thinking of mainstream circus and traditional circus, which is a form of escapism. You know, like you go a show, you forget about your life and you move on, which can be great, no doubt. But Circus Amok inserts a particular political question into it, and then there's also the notion of public space, right? So first of all, who does so Circus Amok performs in New York in public spaces. So there's the notion of who does the space belong to, right? how can we politicize a space? Who is visible in those spaces? What kind of subjects are visible in those spaces? So querying also the spatial politics of a place, right? So all that is something that I think circus scholarship somehow forgets, but by focusing too much of the identity of the queer mainly as a sexual or gender identity. Does it make sense so far?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little bit all over because I have so much to say, but at the same time not enough time. Okay, now I will show you just a little snippages out of videos just to get a sense of actually what's happening. Okay. And I will go through different sections of the videos, so just that you have an idea of the aesthetics. Okay, screen share. Okay, perfect. So that's the beginning. So as you see, circus set up in a park, right? And it's very how to say, like they bring their curtains, you with bicycles or with a small car. It's a very easy self-made setup. The performance performed the beginning parade of a traditional circus, right? You have stilts walkers and so on.
Inside out, we turned the circus around for some reason. How are you all? You found us all right? Oh, missing Bendy, the second tree back here, but we're making a little commemoration today. You look great. You feeling great? Yes. You look great. You feeling glamorous? You feeling fabulous? I can't hear you. I said, are you feeling fabulous? I can't hear you. Are you feeling fabulous? You're looking fabulous. Is that me?
No, it's the monitor.
It's the monitor. Okay, good. As long as it's not there. You're looking fabulous, but something is amiss. I don't know if it's the twinkle in the monitor or something. I feel a little vibration in my elbow, my knee. I don't know. Maybe it's. Did you close the window before you came to the park? It looks nice out, but the weather these days, people? It's not that. Wait a minute. Did you turn off the stove before you came to the circus? Is your house on fire? Did you? It's 4 o'clock. Do you know where your zone is? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and the rest of us. These problems, they are small.
All right. I mean, I think the beginning as so actually the whole, she first of all, Jennifer Miller is the master of ceremony, so like a role that in traditional context a freak would have never occupied, right? So there's already a kind of subversion happening here if we are talking about the notion of the freak, the queer here. Coming into a public space, not just being in a sideshow, but what is much more important for me is actually the notion of the fabulousness and the glamorousness, right? This kind of self, uplifting oneself up, right? So I am this, and the rest of us, right? Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and the rest of us, the identity, the queer, the celebration of a queer identity. But what is very interesting here too, I think for me in terms of performance, is that she interpels the audience as well, right? So there's a response to the audience. First of all, the question of, do you feel glamorous? Do you feel fabulousness, right? And the audience, you know, first, yeah, you know, so there's this a kind of interesting, I think, mirror effect on the audience, you know. So her fabulousness is also contagious and reminds everybody that they are also fabulous in their own self, right? And then and also, of course, the notion of the rest of us, you know. So she's really interpelling the non-normativity in each of us, right? I guess, you know, so what is very interesting in the rest of us, and here hearing a yay from actually the everyone, you know, or the vast majority of the audience, is there's also the, how to say, the effect that actually that everyone has a queerness to itself, right? That we are not, that everybody maybe is also ambiguous in itself, right? I found that very interesting, the introduction of Jennifer Miller to the audience, right? The rest of us, right? So yes, I am also much more than and a particular strict identity can hold, right? So I found that very interesting in terms of her interpellation to the audience, what's happening, right? Her address. It's a very interesting thing. So I prepared a whole summary of the plot. I don't know if I can go through it. At the crossroads, just very fast. It's a topic goes around climate change, about fracking particularly, and how we're all involved in and participate in a system that fosters because it's a capitalist system also built on extractions, that our lives are of course connected to those if we want or not participate in kind of into the effects of global warming and to climate change and extractions. So then we have like the character who is Gregory, who is who meets who meets a fracking agent, and this fracking agent offers him, you know, a rent control apartment for stopping to care about climate change and stuff like that, right? And of course, a rent of control apartment, something so important when you live in New York, that of course he says yes to it, right? So being so. In a sense, but the queer here is also, Gregory is also a queer person, right? So what's happening is, it's not necessarily describing the queer as an outside good person, while the normatives are bad, right? But it describes also that no matter what your identity is, if you self-described as non-normative, you also have, you're often part in a change that produces those kind of problems and social injustices as well, right? Anyway, so it is a very interesting piece because it's not similarly black and white in terms of, you know, or everything what is normative is bad and everything what is non-normative is good, queer is good, normative is bad, but rather the queer is also, so queers are also bad, right? And so on, right? So it's a very interesting thing that happens there as well. Anyway, so then we have other things that's happening. You see a lot of acrobatics in the show, paper cuts. This is, for example, an underwater scene with beautiful paper cuts. Then you have acrobatics performed by the performers. And we have here also queering of fish, the silverfish. which I don't know, the silverfish are the pests, right? In a water scenario. So then we have the querying also of a species, which I think it's interesting, bringing the silverfish into the world of the regular fish world. Anyway, so we have acrobatics, then we have puppet.
You know, you always feel like this at the end of the summer programming season. They're not. Scandal started this week.
It's not my cycle. Everyone always wants to blame it on my cycle. Although I am glad I've just watched the whole 27 seasons of House. I got nothing left. Things are horrible, sister. I mean horrible.
Sister,
What?
you know, things aren't so bad. Look down there in New York City. They got the universal pre-K.
Ah! You got a point. The pre-K.
They've got a black lesbian mayor.
Well, we love our Charlene, we do.
We love Charlene.
And they're only lynching one black man per week now.
I guess you gotta...
And the women, they make almost 77 cents for each man's dollar.
77 cents on the dollar. I'm telling you, things are horrible. Forget it, sister. I've had enough. I mean, they're horrible. You know what I'm saying? Horrible. I mean, horrible. Just horrible. I mean, this is really...
Such a pet for me.
And look at these guys.
Hey, you. Yeah?
Anyway, so you see they have they play also with paper cuts, with puppetry, paper cut art, and staging dialogue between the goddesses, discussing the situation of the world. Anyway, I don't have to go through all of that, but unfortunately, you can look it up. Just Google Circus Amok or the Crossroads. You have the whole show on YouTube. And it's a wonderful show. It's really a delight to watch. So there's a lot of acrobatics, a lot of juggling, but always, you know, connected into a political message. Okay, good. Now the times runs out. I guess we need 50 minutes for discussion. So I assume I only have 5 minutes left, correct? Okay, so I hope, oh, where am I? Whoop. Okay, so we're good. Okay, I hope that gave you a little bit sense of the aesthetic of Circus Amok, right? So you see it has a lot of circus elements in it, but at the same time, you know, it goes much beyond, because there's strict, always political references in the particular act, being in the acrobatic act, being in you know, whatever they stage, the dialogues, they're clowning on, so on. There are political question to the topic that they choose. Here they chose climate change and fracking. So what I found now very interesting is the quote again. The quote sorry. So the notion of fabulousness, and I just would like to read out what I wrote about that. While features of glamour take center stage in Circus Amok, their use does not promote aspiration towards consumer capitalism. Circus Amok Circus is decisively anti-capitalist. Its use of glamour re-echoes, therefore, camp aesthetics and culture. While camp as an aesthetic category resists clear definition and is concerned with the philosophy on transformation and incongruity. Some of these strategies used by camp are aestheticism, aristocratic detachment, irony, theatrical frivolity, parody, effeminacy, and sexual transgression. Similarly to queerness, it sabotages heteronormative logics and inverts intentionality. Female stars play a particularly important role in the camp aesthetics. The apparition of female stardom, for example, in drag queen performances, allowed queer performers and audience to identify with the diva's excessive sexual prowess, agency, and status as objects of desire to substitute as their own. Through identification with the female diva, a queer sense of glamour is performed. And I'm saying that because there's something very diva and glamouresque in the figure of Jennifer Miller, I think. Queer glamour is insofar camper as it is incongruent, theatrical, and humorous. Incongruency describes the juxtaposition of men and women, old and young, expensive and cheap. And that we have that somehow too in the circus amok, right? Like this kind of, it is cheap material, but so beautifully done with so much devotion and love. Theatricality, the hyperdramatic expressivity and costuming, and humor, the drive to make the audience laugh. Importantly, camp is a form of queer resistance in a world where the systems surrounding gender and sexuality are rigidly policed. And I think that Circus Amok recuperates circus glamour through a queer sense of camp. At a crossroads, employ traditional circus aesthetics while simultaneously making fun of them. A case in point is Circus Amok's relationality with virtuosity. While classical circus acts rely on the display of extraordinary mastery over a particular discipline, such as juggling, tight wire walking, and acrobatics, Circus Amok refuses to obey the presentation of excellence, mastery, and virtuosity. The feats performed are simple in a sense that the people can learn them in several training sessions spanning a couple of months instead of years of apprenticeship or instructions in a circus school. Yet they are performed with the same diligence as high-level tricks. Easy tricks are not perceived as lesser and still evoke astonishment in the audience, right? So for example, the figure that you saw in the silverfish, it is a very simple figure. You can learn that in I say, a couple of weeks of session, right? But I think it's really evoked by all the audience, like, wow, they're doing it, how amazing, right? Even if some of the feats were performed with an ironic detachment, the audience reaction seems to be genuine, celebrating enthusiastically artists' acrobatic achievements. Further, Circus Amok's low skill level is, in technical terms, invites mistakes. The wire walker falls from the wire, jugglers drop, and the human pyramid quivers dangerously. In a mainstream circus performance, such signs of imperfections are usually not welcomed. A circus act should showcase prowess and excellence. Mistakes devalue the act and the production value of the show. Circus Amok's mistakes are a way to further confirm the queer character of its circus. During the juggling act of Soufflé Sisters, Miller attempts to juggle 5 balls. While she is able to hold a 5-ball pattern for a couple of seconds, she is unable to catch the balls safely. However, instead of being embarrassed by the fact that she dropped the ball involuntarily, she makes a witty reference to queer theorist Halberstam. Looking at the ball on the floor, she exclaims that she is practicing the queer art of failure. So what I think it's very interesting. Now I think I have so much more to say, and sorry, I was taken away, I guess, with my introduction. But what I found very interesting is that the queerness of Circus Amok is far beyond the notion of identity. It goes really into a more structural question, right? Question of what is virtuosity, who are the bodies who can perform, and recuperating then by at the same time establishing a sense of glamour and fabulousness, kind of a camp queer aesthetics. And I think, and I leave it with that. I think with that, Circus Amok opens, I think, what Munoz also talks about, a queer utopian performativity, right? They are open, Circus Amok opens with a space for queer visibility and for a different understanding, not only of circus, but also of public art, being with each other, celebrating each other's togetherness, but togetherness in difference, and that each difference is fabulous, and glamorous in itself, and which I think is, it's the beauty of their understanding of queer. So, and I think Thank you so much for letting me speak today. I think I leave the 12 minutes for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ante. That was so fascinating. I just, so I know people have questions, but I want to start by asking you, what do you see for the future of traditional circus, given the fact that, you know, circus animals are kind of being, I mean, that's kind of going away, certainly elephants and that sort of thing. But do you think we will still have traditional circus in the future?
Yes, I think it's a question of how one defines traditional circus. If you think of a serial structure and think of an act-based structure, yes, then I think traditional circus stay with us. So, for example, Cirque du Soleil, which a lot of people understand as modern circus because it has no animals, is
Right.
actually very much, I think, much closer in line with traditional circus aspects, if we understand it from the critique also of, as that I discussed earlier, you know, being more a tool of ideological state apparatus, you know, how to say, promoting, being consumerist, being, you know, it's a capitalist endeavor, belonging maybe to a, you know, very much a consumer-driven entertaining, then we might say, yes, it stays with us. However, that does not mean that like a mainstream production has not a particular value in itself, you know, and as the other scholars have shown, that within a mainstream performance, there are also always subversive ways and ways to queer expectations or understandings. Does that make sense? However,
Yes.
with the animals, yes, I think the times are slowly past the use of animals, which I think can be seen as a good thing. Has also some complications because, you know, one if we understand, so okay, if we understand, so now my circus scholar has to come through. I'm so sorry. If we understand that circus is the promotion of human exceptionalism, right? Which a lot of scholars argue it is, right? Especially those that I tried to summarize at the beginning. Then the question is, what is more human exceptional than a circus, an only human circus?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think one interesting aspect of the animal is actually that the human animal relation, and that the hierarchies is also flipped, because animals are then humanized, right? So what we have there actually is again an ambiguity of categories. If we don't have any more the animal performing, I'm not now discussing the ethics of wild, domesticated, exotic animals and so on. Then there's also the question of, does it become actually more human exceptionalist by actually losing a kind of interesting subversiveness that can be experienced in the human-animal encounter and its relationality in terms of cross-species articulation and communication and so on.
I can certainly see Circus Amok being embraced by college campuses, and because, like you say, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And it's very political. I think that's really cool. Okay, somebody else ask a question.
I'll jump in, and then, but if somebody else, please bump me if somebody else has a question. I would just thank you so much, Ante. This has been fabulous. You know, I'm very interested in your idea about that this is methodology. And so I'm wondering how Circus Amok, you know, queering as methodology and Circus Amok as the practice of queering. And so I'm wondering then what that practice teaches us about re-seeing. re-seeing ourselves or re-seeing the world around us, or re-seeing as radical possibility for cultural change, transgressiveness, and so forth. Or just mess. Or just mess.
No, I think it teaches a lot, and I think I didn't come to what I wanted to talk at the end about. I had a whole section of, you prepare and then I'm so bad in time management, Sorry. And so I had a whole section on the utopian space. And I think there's like this interesting understanding that that a space how to say that the hope, or maybe there's like this utopian that performances are not really on the level of understanding, but also affect driven, right? And I really wonder, if you see more those performances and more those bodies on stage, and this kind of do-it-yourself culture with a lot of love and devotion, and accepting also failure as just a part of being in life. If we would be more exposed to that, I wonder if we all would actually also live a more satisfied life. Because the question is like, I mean, I've been a very professional performer, circus, and I really, and there's like this whole. And it's good in one way because one enjoys this too, the perfectionist, the being good and as this thing, really not making errors and stuff like that. But at the same time, it is also very, it closes up opportunities, or other possibilities. Because sometimes a failure opens doors, or opens doors of handling, of how to say, of doing things differently, or also the fun possibility of just like, I'm doing it out of fun, and what I do right now is good enough, and I'm proud of what I have achieved, and just being able to articulate that rather than always working towards a goal, which at sometimes might be so far away and never achievable. So, and I wonder, how maybe a different how a different understanding of what is actually failure and what is actually achievement and what is actually good stuff, how that also might change our relation to each other, right? So I can, as a circus scholar, a circus artist, I can watch the show and say, the acrobatics are shitty, they should go home and train again. She can't hold 5 balls. That is an embarrassment. What does she do on stage, right? That is very easy, to dismiss. But that would like completely also dismiss the love, the devotion, the thing that actually happens while, the ensemble, the group that has been formed, practicing all those little things that actually a show is made of, and which sometimes might be much more important than the particular skill level. And I think that I think from a circus studies perspective was very intriguing for me with Circus Amok. And that's, I think, where the real work of queer came into, as a queer of methodology, right? The queer art of failure, or different understanding of achievement, right? Or, and I think, and in some aspects, I think this is very liberatory, if we let go from certain kind of expectations that wait on us. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there's something that Circus Amok profoundly gives to, especially to people who do performance arts.
Yeah. No, I love the way you put those two in conversation with one another, and that's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Ante, I think you should bring, we should have our own Circus Amok on campus at ETSU.
Well, give me a couple of years.
Yes, yes. Phyllis, I was also thinking about Mardi Gras as circus.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about much outside a traditional circus that
Yeah, well, it's the
takes me to. I was
yeah,
little.
Auntie talked about the carnivalesque and the world
Mhm.
turned upside down, where we reinvent how we understand failure, and thinking back through Munoz and some of that, I think is very, for me, very instructive and very eye-opening and helpful.
Well, we're almost out of time, but thank you so much. That was an intriguing talk, and I'm sure new to a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It was really a pleasure. Again, there was so much more I wanted to say,
I know.
but you know how it is with the time. So how to create time, you know? It's also a question of methodology, I guess, here. But anyway,
Well,
really
we-
appreciate the
Oh, go ahead. I'm
opportunity
sorry.
to share. And it was also very nice for me because I revisited a little bit what I wrote, and I wrote again. So it was just for me also a nice opportunity to re-engage back into writing and to rethink it. And it's always nice to share that with an audience, so with people. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. I really appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for speaking for us. So everybody, I guess have a great rest of the semester, and thank you again, Ante. We really appreciated it.
Thank you. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.